what is up? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Ivy, and today I'm going to be talking about Chain of Iron by Cassandra Clare. I've been wanting to make this video for so long, and today I finally have time to record it. This is the second book in the Last Hours trilogy, which is part of the Shadowhunters Chronicles. So I just wanted to start out by talking about where we left off with Chain of Gold. This little section is going to have spoilers for Chain of Gold. So James and Cordelia are engaged to save face after Cordelia was like, "James was in my room with me all night." Gasp. Cordelia is actually in love with James, and James is in love with Cordelia, but he doesn't know it because of the stupid bracelet. I've seen it called the Gracelet on the internet, and I really like that, so the Gracelet. Speaking of Grace, Grace and Lucy are working together to try and bring Jesse back. He gave James his last breath at the end of Chain of Gold. Matthew's still a mess, and no one's doing anything about it. He is drinking and drinking and drinking, and no one seems to think that it's a problem. Belial is gone, but let's face it, we all know that's not actually the case. He's gonna come back. And Tatiana is in the Adamant Citadel, which is bad. I just want to say that it took me forever to realize that it's called the Adamant Citadel because of the Adamas, and I just felt like the dumbest person ever. I just want to get into spoilers because, I mean, it's hard to talk about this book without spoiling it, so if you haven't read this lovely book right here, Chain of Iron, please leave so I don't spoil it for you, because that sucks. That's no fun. Go read it. The stupid bracelet. Every single time I would pick up this book and read it, I'd be waiting and waiting for that bracelet to come off. So we begin with someone who was quite obviously Belial or some form of him murdering bunches of people. Bunches of people? That didn't make any sense. There's a murder on the loose. It's probably Belial because at the very beginning it's like, ooh, James and Cordelia, I want to kill them. Rah! Pretty early on in this book, we also confirmed that Matthew is bi, which was exciting. I mean, I think we kind of all knew, but it was nice to just see it confirmed so that it's not speculation anymore. So we're chilling at the Hell Ruel, and this fairy woman tells Cordelia something about Wayland the Smith. She's like, oh, he's in this weird barrow thing. And that's like, obviously when I was like, okay, so Wayland the Smith is gonna be a thing in this book. That's fun. The fact that this fairy woman knew that Cordelia was going into a fake wedding should have been a red flag. I don't know why Cordelia didn't think, how does this fairy woman know about my situation? That seems kind of suspicious if you ask me. The reverse mermaid was so funny. I don't know what I was expecting, to be honest, from the merry thieves throwing a bachelor party for James, but that was pretty perfect. James goes back to the Shadow Realm, or a Shadow Realm, which is not good, not unexpected, but not good. So in the last book, I despised Grace Blackthorn. I hated her, and the flashbacks in this book have made me start to feel sorry for her. I'm trying so hard not to. I am fighting this so hard. I do not want to have any sympathy for her, but I do a little bit. I mean, she's been through a lot. There's lots of weird stuff happening with her. She has reasons for her actions. That being said, I still think that there are so many decisions that she could have made better and that she is still a despicable person, but I also have like a tiny little grain of sympathy for her. When Elias just showed up at Cordelia's wedding, I was so mad at him. I thought James handled it so well. Like, James in this book, obviously I was frustrated with the Gracelet, but the way he handles a lot of stuff is so awesome. The way he like takes care of Cordelia and deals with her family issues so well just made me so happy. I was so excited for Philomena D'Angelo to come in and shake things up, be a new character, and then, you know, she died. When Grace shows up at like the wedding party thing to talk to James, it was so bizarre that Matthew didn't seem to remember what had happened with her to him. He just doesn't seem to remember that entire thing where she made him kiss her and like totally blackmailed him, and that was really interesting to me. I loved learning more about Grace and how exactly her powers worked and where they came from. This is one of the things that redeemed Grace just the tiniest bit for me, is that she came to that party wanting to take the bracelet off of him, and then Tatiana showed up and blackmailed her with Jesse, because that is Grace's biggest weakness, is Jesse. She will do anything to get Jesse back, and obviously Tatiana knows that and exploits that, and so Grace was gonna take the bracelet off, but now she's not. The fact that Jem played the violin at Cordelia and James's wedding made me so incredibly happy. Also made me happy to see Tessa help Cordelia out so much. She was there for her. She was getting her through the awful social situation, and Tessa, man, we love her. Everything that James did with the house he picked out, all the thought and detail that he put into all the rooms for Cordelia, hurt my heart so much, because she's always like, oh, he doesn't really love me, he's just trying to be nice because he feels sorry for me. Like, no, Cordelia, he's obviously in love with you. He designed everything in this house for you, and he knows you better than anyone. I was glad when Cordelia finally learned why everyone seems to hate Alistair, because it just wasn't good for her not to know all of that history. I really have enjoyed Alistair's arc, and I can't wait to see where it goes from here, because I really like him. He has a lot of damage, obviously, but I think he's genuinely trying to do better, and he is a really good brother to Cordelia, and their relationship is one of my favorite parts of this series. Something that really annoyed me in this book, and it kind of annoys me in every Cassandra Clare book, is the relationship drama that is so unnecessary. I don't know how Cordelia could possibly not realize that James is actually in love with her. I don't get it. It's so obvious. I feel like there's just so much unnecessary drama in here, and I get that that's basically what Cassandra Clare books are, is drama, but some of it just feels so cheap and unnecessary. Like, don't get me wrong, I love me some drama if it's done right. Some of the stuff in this book just didn't feel I don't know. I wasn't a fan. It seemed a little too much to me. As soon as we find out that Tatiana showed Grace what happened to Annabelle Blackthorne, the alarms started going off in my head. This cannot be good. The stuff with Anna and Ariadne hurts me. I want them to be together so badly. I freaking love Anna, obviously. I want them to be together, and I don't know why Anna's being so stubborn, because yes, Ariadne hurt her a lot, but Ariadne since then has tried so hard and done so much to try to win Anna back over, and if that doesn't, like, if they don't get together by the end of the series, I'm gonna be very upset. I cannot for the life of me remember this wheel demon, like the scene when they come out of the building, I think the Institute, and there's this wheel demon, and Will goes off and chases it like it's a regular thing. I know that has to be referencing the Infernal Devices, but I can't remember, like, what happened there. It was funny, though. The fact that both James and Lucy mentioned having headaches was freaking me out, and I don't think it was ever resolved. I mean, we know, like, some stuff was going on with James's dreams and everything, but why were they both having headaches? I don't know if it was just a coincidence, but I feel like with Cassandra Clare, there's never coincidences. The killer that is Roman Luce is stealing runes, which was very interesting to me, because I could not for the life of me think of why Belial would need to steal runes. James is having dreams, and basically he kind of sees the murders happen, and it feels like he is the one doing the murdering, so he thinks that he could possibly be the murderer, but I mean, that would be way too obvious. Something weird that happens is when Daisy and Lucy are training together and they decide to, like, practice the Parabati ceremony. Lucy, quote, jumped as if stung, which I found really weird. I don't know if it had to do with what was going on with Cortana or if it's something else, but I found that really weird and kind of concerning. Charlotte finally confronts Matthew about the drinking, and I mean, I was happy that someone confronted him, but also they didn't make much progress. Like, it's so freaking cool that Christopher made this revolver that James can use. And the fact that James is the only one is so fascinating, and it's super, super, super exciting because this is something that we've never seen before in Shadowhunters. Christopher is amazing, and he is such a hero in his own way, and I love him. Another thing that I really liked was how James starts to see how much Alistair has struggled his entire life, because James is starting to realize how messed up this family is. I also really loved how Thomas in this book is still grieving, because I feel like in a lot of books, a character will die, like Barbara died, and then the characters are sad for maybe a page, and they're like, let's keep on keeping on. But Thomas is really affected by his sister's death. It's still affecting him, the choices he's making, the things he's saying, how he's thinking, how he's reacting, and I really liked that because that is so important for us to see as readers, and also just for characters, because if, like, your sister dying doesn't affect you somehow, then there's something wrong with this picture. That scene with the ghost telling Lucy where to find Philomena, and Lucy wiping his memory of, like, whatever he had done, was super interesting. We've started going down this really dark path with Lucy, and I think it was really well done how it's like just slowly growing. Like, this memory wipe thing is definitely very questionable, and Lucy is starting to make a lot of questionable decisions, and I find that really interesting. When Matthew just all of a sudden moves out of his parents' house and like gets his own place, no one was bothered by it. Why would no one be concerned that Matthew so abruptly decided to move out of his parents' house? Like, that's just not a normal thing to spontaneously do. They go to, like, the warehouse and they talk to Philomena, and she kind of tells them what she can, but it's not much. She doesn't really know much, and then she passes on. Cortana burns Daisy for the first time when they get attacked by demons, and obviously this wasn't good, and it was getting concerning, but more on that later. And James is having memory issues. He doesn't remember the book that Cordelia read to him when he was sick, or like a bunch of other things that I can't think of right now, and I knew it was the bracelet, and I just wanted it to come off. I honestly, for a little bit, thought the killer was Elias, and then I also thought it was Charles. Lucy and Grace start talking to Malcolm Fade, and every time he came up, I wanted to throw the book across the room. Elias is murdered. It's awful. Cordelia and her mom and her brother are grieving because obviously, and I feel like this just kind of rocks their world, and it just sort of shifted, like, the tone of the book, and, like, Cordelia herself just shifted after that. Grace wanted to, in exchange for Malcolm's help, get him a message from Annabelle. So then Tatiana's like, oh, Grace, sweetie, no, Annabelle's been dead for years and years and years and years. Tatiana tells Grace that if she wants to know where the memory crystal is, she has to pay James a visit. And again, Tatiana is exploiting Grace's weaknesses, and I hate it so much. Can we talk about Effie for a second? Effie is so funny. I love how she just keeps walking in on James doing the weirdest stuff and is like, oh my god, I need to get out of here. I need a promotion. I deserve a day off. She was great. She was one of the highlights of the book for me. One of my favorite scenes in the book is when Matthew sneaks in through Daisy's window after Elias has been killed. Matthew tells Cordelia that he knows that she's in love with James, and Cordelia's like, what? How did you know? And he's like, well, it's obvious. Matthew finally tells Cordelia what he did to Charlotte and her unborn child. He finally tells someone, and I was so happy that he finally told someone, but now Cordelia obviously has this burden on her, and she feels like she can't tell anyone else, and she doesn't hate him, obviously. She's like, Matthew, it's okay, like, I could never hate you. You need to tell Charlotte, and she will forgive you, but of course Matthew's never gonna do that. When Charlotte finds out, because she will find out, it's gonna be bad. Another one of my favorite scenes was when Thomas came to the door and just said sorry to Alistair and then just walks away. I find it so good that Thomas who's grieving over Barbara, feels an even stronger connection to Alistair now because Alistair is now grieving his father and they know what each other is going through, and it's so good. Grace visits James and makes him kiss her, and he knows it feels wrong, but of course with the bracelet he doesn't know why, he doesn't do anything about it. Matthew and Cordelia decide to go and see Wayland the Smith. First of all, why would Cordelia not take Cortana to the Silent City first? Why doesn't she think, maybe I should consult Jem about this, or just any silent brother? Why would you go into the middle of nowhere to this shady place with Wayland the Smith when some weird fairy woman told you to? Have these kids not been told not to trust fairies at shadow markets? It was so obviously a trick. Why would Wayland the Smith show up and be like, yeah, Cordelia, you're my whatchamacallit now, like, cool. No, it's so way too good to be true. Cordelia should have known better. Did these kids not train? I do not understand. The scene when Grace told Malcolm about how Annabelle's dead and Malcolm freaks out, I did not enjoy that one very much. We find out something about Grace. Apparently Tatiana basically bought her because Grace's family didn't really want her. So Tatiana was like, here, I'll pay you a bunch of money if I can have her as my daughter, and yikes. I loved the scene when James tells all his friends about the dreams he's been having, and he's like, I think I might be a murderer, and they're all like, obviously not, you idiot. I just love how they're all there for each other, and like they trust each other so much, and they all just know that James is not a murderer. When James tells Cordelia how he kissed Grace, Cordelia is obviously mad because, you know, duh, but she's like, okay, now you need to kiss me. Why would that be what she said? Why would she not say, okay, now you have to do something for me? Take that bracelet off your wrist. The opportunity was there. It was the best opportunity she had to say, James, that bracelet, it needs to come off. But no, she had to be like, oh, kiss me, James, just because we needed to build more sexual tension. We all knew that Thomas patrolling alone would eventually go south. Lo and behold, he's framed for the murders. Lillian Highsmith's last words of him being dead in his prime and his wife wept and wept. I should have known. I will say, the wife line, I was like, oh, well, that has to be Tatiana. But I was like, but her husband can't be back from the dead. That doesn't make any sense. So then I like dismissed the thought. Another one of my favorite scenes, probably my favorite scene in this entire book, was the scene when Matthew and Christopher and James go to see Thomas in the sanctuary. They're all like freaking out because they're so angry, but the way they interact and the way they take care of each other and just care about each other so much, it hit me so hard. Like the way Matthew, I think, like cuts off the chains and James is like warming up Thomas's hands, and they're all just, they love each other so much. Definitely my favorite aspect of this series is the friendships and the strong bonds that these people have with each other. It's so fun to read about. I love them so much. When Bridgestock comes in and the crew is like standing up to him being like, no, there's no way Thomas is the murderer, James got so sassy and I was here for it. He was such a badass, standing up for himself and his friends, and it was hot. Alistair walking in there and saying, I know he didn't do it because I followed him. I was so excited. The fact that they were going to be alone together all night in the sanctuary made me even more excited. We have this thingy called a pithos, which is made of adamas, and Lillian, it was by her body. This means that we're going on a trip to the shadow market to see if we can figure out what this thing is, and Cordelia sees how much going to the shadow market is upsetting Matthew, and she knows why, but she just brushes it off and pretends like nothing's wrong. I freaking loved seeing Christopher at the shadow market, completely in his element, going from stall to stall and haggling and just being the cutest little muffin. I absolutely hate all the secrets that everyone is keeping from each other in this book. It made me so angry, especially the secrets between the Parabati. Like, that is what kills me the most. Scene in the alley with Matthew and James broke me. I hate thinking about it, especially for some reason when Cordelia shows up and Matthew pretends to be drunker than he really is. That specific detail hurt me a lot, and I don't know why. Lucy makes a deal with Malcolm Fade. If Malcolm helps Lucy bring Jessie back, Lucy's going to try and summon Annabelle's ghost so that they can find Annabelle's body so that Malcolm can bring Annabelle back from the dead. Why does this not feel like a good idea to me? I freaking loved Alistair and Thomas's scene in the sanctuary. They finally start making out, thank goodness. The fact that Alistair understands Thomas so well is just so cute to me. He's like, Thomas, you couldn't control what happened to your sister Barbara, so you're basically just trying to get revenge on like all evil, and that's why you're being so reckless, but you don't want to pull anyone down with you. And Alistair tells Thomas that he bullied the Merry Thieves at school because he was jealous of them, because he thought their lives were perfect and that they were just like so perfect and that he couldn't be that way and he had no friends, and oh my god, my heart. Obviously, he still should not have been a bully because that's never the answer, but the fact that he was pushed to do something like that because of how just messed up his life is, I hate it. It's awful. I just want him to be happy. So Magnus shows up after not being in the book like the entire time, and I was excited, and we're learning that Lilith got kicked out of Edom by Belial, and she probably wants it back now. Magnus and James are going to try to go to Edom because that's where James has been going in his dreams. The fact that Grace just broke into the consul's house, like, what? She runs into Christopher, and Christopher's innocence and just blind trustingness, that's not a word, but his blind trust of Grace hurts my heart. I do think that he and Grace are obviously going to end up together. I mean, it's like that on the family tree, and the building blocks of that relationship are starting to form. Grace is the one to discover that the Pythos transfers runes, which I thought was really interesting. Lucy, Anna, and Ariadne go to talk to Hypatia Vex, and Hypatia tells them that Tatiana had hired a warlock named Emmanuel Gast, and Lucy starts connecting the dots, and I started connecting the dots. I am going to say this right now, and you can believe me or you can choose not to, but I predicted that Jessie was Belial's anchor from the very end of Chain of Gold, having an anchor, and I'm thinking that Jessie is that anchor. I was so proud of myself for guessing that. I never figure things out, so I was so excited. Matthew shows up and gets the Pythos from Kit. It obviously wasn't Matthew. Also, as soon as Magnus starts doing some magic, and his magic is amber and not blue, I was like, no, this isn't good. That's not Magnus. That wasn't Matthew. We're all gonna die. So James and Magnus confront Belial in Edom, and Belial is like, why are you here, James? Like, I haven't been sending you any dreams. What are you talking about? The fact that Belial, like, catches the bullet and throws it back at James was so cool. The bracelet finally comes off. They're, like, kissing or whatever, and it just falls off, and then they can't talk about it. James can't be like, oh my god, Cordelia, like, I understand everything now, because they have to run because the world is ending. Lucy summons Emmanuel Gast and forces him to tell the truth. Again, this is just another step on Lucy's path towards darkness because she is freaking torturing him. I never thought about the fact that James and Lucy's powers come from Belial, so that means that Belial can control ghosts too. So now I'm wondering, does this mean that Belial has been controlling Jessie's ghost the entire time? But the more I thought about it, the more I was like, like, I don't really know what the motivation behind that would be. I mean, obviously Jessie's body has been possessed and, you know, murdering all these people, but I don't think Jessie's ghost has been controlled, if that makes sense. So Lucy finds the runes all over Jessie, and she was actually about to kill him, which I give her a lot of credit for because I did not expect her to just grab that sword and, like, start going. I thought she would hesitate at least. We figure out that Belial is trying to release this dude, Leviathan, who's like this powerful sea demon. It was kind of random. At the Institute, we're fighting giant tentacles. Stuff's bad. Yeah. Matthew, James, and Cordelia find Charles very badly wounded because James has another dream and they know where he is, so they rush to Charles. Jesse shows up, or I guess I should say Belial in Jesse's body shows up. Belial had Jesse as his anchor, as a backup plan for if he couldn't possess James. Obviously, he couldn't possess James, so now he's walking around in Jesse's body. He's trying to make Jesse's body stronger so that he can face Cortana. Then Lilith joins the party, and I would just like to reiterate the fact that I knew it wasn't Magnus, and I knew it wasn't Waylon the Smith, and I mean, I didn't get that it was Lilith, but hey, I was on the right track. Here's another thing that makes me feel sorry for Grace. This poor girl thought that she was being successful, like that all the dark stuff she was trying was finally starting to work to bring Jesse back. But no, Belial was just possessing him. So now, Cordelia is basically Lilith's slave because she swore fealty and it's bad. She is desperately trying not to kill Lucy. It's a struggle and I did not know how it was going to end, but then James uses the revolver to shoot Lilith. Lilith's hold loosens on Cordelia. Lucy uses her ghosty powers to command Jesse to cast Belial out of his body, and it actually works. Once Belial is out of Jesse, James makes Daisy a shadow with him and she stabs Belial for the second time with Cortana, meaning he only needs one more mortal wound to be completely gone, or at least that's what we think as of now. With Belial being stabbed again and Lilith kind of shot, the Institute is safe and everyone is regrouping. Alistair tells Thomas that they can't be together, which I mean I saw coming, but still made me sad. Cordelia tells everyone, well not everyone, but she tells her friends like the Merry Thieves and Anna and Lucy that she is kind of sort of enslaved to the mother of all demons, and they're all just like, cool, we'll help you fix it. Now that James doesn't have the bracelet on anymore, he's finally clear-headed. He is finally seeing that Matthew is in some serious pain, and I never thought about the bracelet affecting James's relationship with Matthew, but it makes sense now why he wasn't doing more to help Matthew. Anna is still refusing to forgive Ariadne, which again makes me sad. It's obviously killing Anna, but she is stubborn. Then we have the end of Lucy's arc for this book. She's been getting closer and closer and closer and closer to darkness, and she finally commands Jesse to live, and he does. But then Lucy passes out, and that's all that we really know. Malcolm and Jesse take her and they're going somewhere, I forget where, but this is not good. Grace. At the end of this book, Grace openly defies Tatiana. Finally, she says, no more of this bullcrap, I'm done with you, and I was so proud of her. James is in the process of trying to explain the bracelet to Cordelia when Grace shows up. Grace tells James everything about the bracelet, how she's been a complete and total butthole his entire life, and he's gonna go to the Clave to try to get her powers taken away. Cordelia, of course, walks in and only overhears the part that would make it seem like James is in love with Grace. So she runs away to Matthew's flat. Matthew confesses his love for Cordelia, and Cordelia's like, huh, didn't see that one coming. So now Matthew and Cordelia are going to Paris because Cordelia can't be with James right now because she's a mess, and she's like, Matthew, promise me you won't drink and I'll go to Paris with you as friends. That's gonna be interesting. I don't even know, like, where this could possibly be going. James, of course, almost catches up to them, but then is stopped by Will because they have to go after Lucy. So Will, James, and the real Magnus are going to go after Lucy and try to save her from herself. Tatiana just casually walks out of the Adamant Citadel. She gives Belial the key to the Iron Tombs, which we don't know what those are yet. Belial carries her away, and I find it so not sad because I hate Tatiana, but funny that she thinks that Belial actually cares about her. He's obviously gonna kill her as soon as she's served her purpose. Anyway, so that's where it ended. Honestly, the epilogue wasn't as groundbreaking as I expected it to be. Alright, my final thoughts on this book. My absolute favorite part of this series is the characters and their relationships, specifically the friendships. I need more Matthew Fairchild. I absolutely adore him. He's my favorite character in the series, and I'm really hoping that since he's going to Paris with Cordelia, we're going to see more of him in the next book. I loved how Lilith came into play. That was so unexpected for me. I also am really interested in the fealty thing. How's this gonna work now that Cordelia is like Lilith's servant? I think this was a really interesting direction that I did not see coming at all, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see how all of the characters handle it. The necromancy aspect with Lucy and Grace is going to be super interesting, and obviously Malcolm Fade, I think we're going to see more of him. Grace, what's gonna happen with her? With her powers, her powers aren't gone, but now James knows about it, so that's going to be another interesting aspect. I honestly enjoyed the pacing of this book. It was slow and deliberate, and we were just kind of developing our characters and their relationships. It obviously really picks up towards the end, as most Cassandra Clare books do, and I was like, I couldn't stop reading. I love how everything comes together, how all these different plot lines, which don't seem like they're connected, always end up being connected. So good. The only frustration I had with this book was the miscommunication and the unnecessary drama. I'm so tired of that in Cassandra Clare books, but honestly, this book, there's so much more to it, and I love the characters, and I cannot wait for the next book. I need to know when it's coming out, because I don't think we know yet, but I will be waiting and waiting. Overall, I'm giving this a 4.5 out of 5 stars. So that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you next time with another video. Bye.